At what stories are making the headlines this Monday afternoon, it's the ITV Lunchtime News.
Heating up and shutting down. How parts of the country are grinding to a halt on what could be the hottest day ever. More schools have closed, more train services are delayed or cancelled as the Met Office warns worse is to come because of man-made emissions.
By the end of the century, we anticipate anything up to 1 in 3 years seeing 40 degrees, depending on the emission pathways we follow.
Ambulances on alert. How will the NHS cope with the heat wave? How to spot if your pet has heat stroke. We'll have the latest forecast for the next 2 days and the latest advice. Also ahead. 5 to become 4 in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister, as Sunak and Truss force the next TV debate to be cancelled. And we did it. Love is patient. J-Lo on finally getting married to Ben Affleck.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. The short-term impact of what's set to be a record-breaking heatwave is a country in near chaos. Some schools have closed, rail travel is cancelled or disrupted, and the health service is on the brink. In the long term, well, the Met Office warned today we could see temperatures over 40 every 1 to 3 years by the end of the century because of climate change. Right now, another family is in shock as the unprecedented temperatures claimed another victim, a 13-year-old boy who got into difficulty in a river. With the latest on a country on red alert, here's Ian Woods.
It's a day to try to stay cool, but it won't be easy. Not when record temperatures threaten health and infrastructure. The morning rush hour was noticeably quieter, many opting to stay home, some having no choice.
This is due to severe weather.
Some services on the East Coast main line between Leeds, York and London have been cancelled amid fears of track buckling in the heat.
There's been a few cancellations this morning, but it's gone okay. But tomorrow all the trains cancelled from where I live.
The way I look at it is people pay good money to go abroad to get this sort of weather. We get 2 days of it over here and the whole country comes to a standstill. What does that say about us as a nation?
This is exceptional, but the Met Office say climate change could make it more common.
This weather is absolutely unprecedented. We have never seen anything like these temperatures in our models before, but by the end of the century, we anticipate anything up to 1 in 3 years seeing 40 degrees, depending on the emission pathways we follow. So yes, absolutely, it's a rapidly increasing probability of high temperatures.
These trucks are normally at their busiest in the depths of winter, but the extremely high temperatures mean gritters will be out on the roads.
The high temperatures through the period of the heat wave build up the temperatures in the road and it can become a bit liquefied on the top. So we spread the cracker dust that just dries it all out, makes it better for the vehicles to run on and reflects some of the heat from the sun, stop it getting worse.
Heading for the beach or river may seem like a good place to cool off, but the Coast Guard are preparing for a busy day. A 13-year-old drowned in a river in Northumberland.
We will have lots of missing children, I can guarantee that will happen. We'll have people in difficulty on inflatable toys.
Temperatures like those forecast today will be fatal for some.
For example, last year we had 2 short periods of heat wave, which did not reach the levels of temperature that we are seeing this year. And unfortunately, we saw over 1,600 excess deaths.
Despite advice to work from home in order to avoid public transport, for many people, an air-conditioned office is the best place to be.
At home, I work in my bedroom on the top floor, which is an absolute oven. So it's worth the trip in to go into a fridge.
Shame we can't really go to work in shorts, but you know, still good anyway.
Well, this week, here's a job where you can. For schools that have taken the decision to stay open, teachers are allowed to dress as casually as their pupils.
But significantly, a lot of parents have made the decision for us today because we've seen 160 out of 380 children not in school today.
In Cambridge, a lucky few were enjoying the hot weather. This is where the current British record temperature was set in 2019. That figure of 38.7 Celsius is expected to be broken either today or tomorrow. Ian Woods, ITV News.
Let's get the latest picture for you now. Our North of England reporter Sangeeta Lal is in Leeds and our Wales reporter Rhys Williams is at the Royal Welsh Show in Powys. Let's start with Sangeeta and the disruption on the rails. What is the picture then?
Well, temperatures here are already incredibly high and expected to get even higher tomorrow. Leeds expected to reach around 38 degrees, possibly higher, and that will have an impact to travel because Network Rail have today said they are going to suspend all trains from about 12 o'clock in the afternoon till about 8 in the evening on the East Coast main line. So that will have a huge impact to tens of thousands of passengers trying to reach the north from London and the same vice versa. Leeds, South Yorkshire and London, there will be no trains connected between those routes. Also, trains will be affected on the West Coast main line. Avanti have warned that they're going to have to reduce the speed of the trains there, and the reason for this is because of how hot it is. Steel expands, it flexes and it can buckle. Network Rail have today warned there is a high possibility of buckled tracks, which is why they want to suspend services. Now, that's also going to have an impact on other operators who have today warned, for example, LNER, that they don't want to run any services tomorrow because of the risk to the tracks and also overhead wires. So the advice is check before you travel, and if you do have to travel, wear cool clothes and take plenty of water.
I'm here in the Royal Welsh Show in Llanelwedd near Builth in Mid Wales. It's one of the biggest agricultural events in Europe and the pinnacle of the British farming calendar. And organisers have asked the more than 50,000 people expected here every day this week to prepare for the heat, with temperatures expected to reach around 36 degrees here on the showground. But extra provisions are also being made for the animals here, of course. Many of them you can see behind me, perhaps. The show's chief vet admitted this morning that the forecast for this week was worrying. Pigs are being lathered with sunscreen and wrapped in wet blankets, and organisers have invested £50,000 in fans and a new ventilation system to keep the 8,000 animals here as cool as they can. Wales isn't going to be quite as hot as England today, although there is an amber warning in place for heat across the whole country. The temperature in Gogerthan near Aberystwyth was already 31 degrees at 11 a.m. this morning, and forecasters are expecting Wales's hottest ever day, recorded all the way back in 1990, to be broken today.
Rhys, thank you. The ITV weather presenter Lucy Verasamy joins me now. It's just after 1:30, Lucy. How hot has it got so far today?
Nina, temperatures are soaring as I speak. This is an historic heat wave, a record-breaking heat wave, temperatures we've never seen before in our lifetime. And already those temperatures are in excess of 30 degrees across a huge swathe of England and Wales, already in excess of 35 degrees just before lunchtime.
And where might we see the hottest places in the UK, both today and tomorrow?
Well, as I mentioned, temperatures already climbing and in excess of 35 degrees this afternoon. We're expecting those numbers to peak at around about 37, 38 degrees as we head through the latter stages of today. That's near record-breaking heat. And together with this, those temperatures set to exceed these numbers tomorrow. It's then we'll see the peak of the heat, close to 40 degrees. And this isn't a south or southeast based story. This is a nationwide story. These temperatures are exceptional for this time of year and for a regular heat wave. We're expecting the peak of the heat, the highest temperatures tomorrow across the Midlands and parts of Yorkshire, together with record-breaking warm nights.
Lucy, we seem to be seeing these extreme style heat waves more frequently. Is it something we need to be getting used to?
Well, it's certainly looking looking like what was the exception is now becoming the norm. We used to see temperatures in excess of 35 degrees very sparsely, but we're seeing this happening more and more, especially in the last 20 years. Those temperatures have been soaring during this heat wave, and at this stage, we haven't seen numbers quite this high in our lifetime. So we're expecting numerous records to be broken in the next 24 to 48 hours nationwide.
Lucy, thank you. And Lucy will be back with a full forecast after the news. How then is the health service coping with the heat? The government announced at the weekend it was putting in extra support for ambulance services today and tomorrow, including extra call handlers. I'm joined now by Richard Webber, who's from the College of Paramedics. Thank you for talking to me this lunchtime at this extremely busy time, Richard. How are ambulance services doing so far? Have the extra resources had an impact?
It is helping, but we've seen a number of delays in offloading patients to hospital in the last few days. Hospitals are full, and so people are ringing 999 who need help, who have quite a prolonged wait for it. What we're asking people to do is take as much preventative measures as they can, drink sensibly, drink plenty of water, keep in the shade, and do your best to look after yourself.
What are the hospitals doing to cope right now?
So hospitals have already cancelled a number of elective operations. They're cancelling outpatient department appointments in order to free capacity up so they can treat more patients in the emergency department. But what we're really keen to do is to try and prevent people from getting to that position first of all. So drink plenty of fluid, stay in the shade, be careful when you exercise, and only travel if you really need to.
Yeah, you might have heat-related problems in the next 2 days. You might have something completely unrelated. What is your advice to somebody who in normal circumstances would quite confidently ring 999 because they feel seriously ill? Presumably you still want them to do that.
Absolutely. If you have chest pains, if somebody's having a stroke, if somebody's seriously ill, obviously do call 999, but consider alternatives. Contact your GP. You can go to your local pharmacy or call 111 or go to 111 online for support and advice.
Okay, is that reassuring to people, though, if they really are in a situation where they feel like they're having something like a stroke or a heart attack?
The ambulance service absolutely will get you and will prioritise calls. It takes 999 calls in now, fully assesses the call, decides on the priority that you need help. People do get help quickly, but we do need to prioritise. And unfortunately, some patients have waited much longer than any of us would like them to wait. But we will, obviously, the ambulance services will prioritise that those emergency calls, such as heart attacks and strokes, who need help really quickly.
If you are somebody who wants to go out and about and try to enjoy the sunshine, what signs should you be looking out for? You've given advice about making sure you're hydrated and everything, but if you're comparing you being a little bit hot and bothered to actual heat stroke, what's the difference?
I think it's keeping an eye, bearing in mind age. So people who are very young or elderly are not as able to regulate their temperature as well. So be particularly careful with those, particularly with neighbours. If people get very red or hot, become profusely sweating, suddenly start feeling really disconnected and unable to cope with the heat, they're really the heat signs you want to look out for. Somebody suffering either heat exhaustion or then go on to heat stroke. But it's absolutely about preventative, taking on board plenty of water. And if you feel uncomfortable, find some shade and then stop, and certainly don't be exercising in the middle of the day. OK,
Richard Webber, let's hope the heatwave comes and goes quite quickly for all who are working today on the front line, like all the paramedics out there. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, from people to pets, what can you do to protect your dogs or other animals over the next 48 hours? I'm joined by Alison Thomas, head vet at the pet charity Blue Cross. OK, first of all, let's make it really clear. How can you spot if your dog has heat stroke?
Yes, you can. Like people, dogs will start to look very uncomfortable when they're too hot. Because dogs primarily lose heat by panting, you'll see your dog panting and perhaps unable to stop panting. They may drool saliva as they get more and more hot. Eventually, if heat stroke strikes, then they may collapse, have vomiting, disorientation, and ultimately it is a potential killer.
OK, and in terms of panting, a dog pants when they're excited. This will look different, will it?
It will be Much more persistent, and when your dog is excited and panting, you can usually distract the dog and it will stop panting. If it's a dog that's approaching heat stress or heat stroke, then it will be very difficult for that dog to stop panting at all.
OK, we've just heard Richard there say don't exercise in the midday sun. Presumably the same is the case for not taking a dog out for a walk, but are there times in the next 2 days you can still walk your dog?
Yeah, I think it's much cooler in the morning, early in the morning, so taking your dog out then may be a better option. And also late at night and probably after dark really is a better time to exercise your dog. These temperatures seem to be staying quite high quite late into the evening.
Yep, OK. And in terms of hydration, are there any kind of treats that you perhaps wouldn't think about but you should be giving them right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of recipes for making frozen treats on the Blue Cross website.
Give us a couple of examples.
Well, you can pack a toy, a rubber toy with food and pack in a bit of extra water, freeze that, and then that's a fantastic treat to give your dog in the shade. They can just slowly lick it, cool down, get some nice flavours. Similarly with cats, you can freeze a little bit of chicken stock or the spring water out of a can of tuna, and they'll enjoy licking that and cooling down and taking in those flavours.
OK, Alison Thompson, thank you. Thomas, thank you very much for joining me, and thanks for all that advice for all the pet owners out there. Thank you. Well, the heat in Britain is reflected across much of Europe, where extreme temperatures and a lack of rain are leading to multiple major wildfires in countries like Croatia and Portugal. More towns are to be evacuated in France because the winds have changed direction there, while in Spain, firefighters supported by military brigades are battling more than 30 forest fires. With the latest, here's Sally Biddulph.
Summer near Bordeaux in southwest France, and wildfires are rampant. Firefighters tackle it from the ground and repeatedly from the air, trying to stop the spread. This one has raged for 6 days, forcing 16,000 people from their homes. A dry spring in Europe ushered in a scorching summer, with temperatures now over 42 degrees in Spain. The conditions for wildfires are perfect, making it even harder to fight them. Malaga is one of the worst affected areas, where flames are encroaching on homes. One British holidaymaker watched on helplessly as it got very close to their villa in Mijas.
It was like a solid line of flames right up on the top of the mountain, which we hadn't been able to see earlier, so we clearly knew that the situation had increased. It was really concerning because we knew that at this point we were going to have to spring into action.
Wildfires are not unusual in Europe, but this scale and ferocity are. For Dawn and Steve Desson, who live in Malaga, this has been the worst one they have ever seen.
I saw it streaming down. It was just beyond comprehension. It came over the top of the hill and took out a pine forest, and the speed of it came down. It was like an avalanche of fire. It was just incredible. You could feel the heat.
On the coast, special planes scoop up seawater, like this one in Fuengirola, not a normal sight on a beach full of tourists. The water later dumped from the air where it's most needed. Fighting these fires is a gargantuan battle with no end yet in sight. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Moving on to the day's other big story, and by 8 tonight we'll know which 4 candidates have made it through to the next round of the Tory leadership contest. Sky News has cancelled its debate today after both Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss said they wouldn't be taking part in tomorrow's debate. To our political correspondent Carl Dillon at Westminster, another round of voting today, but not another debate just yet after last night's clash.
Yeah, that's right. Clearly, Conservative MPs talking to people over in the Houses of Parliament today were very unhappy with the way these debates were playing out, with the division that was on show, and they've been making that clear on their WhatsApp groups today to the leadership candidates, particularly after the pointed debate that happened last night on ITV. So Rishi Sunak, probably it wasn't that difficult a decision for him to make, although it looks bad to pull out of a debate you've already committed to. He is the front runner, so he probably had the most to lose by having a debate. Liz Truss also, her economic policies had been taking a bit of a beating from the former Chancellor, so she's also pulled on. Although she is now the bookies' second favourite. She's overtaken Penny Mordaunt. I think the person who might have had the most to gain, Tom Tugendhat, is actually not going to make it through. He's the one most likely to be voted out when MPs vote this afternoon.
Carl Dinnan, thank you very much. Thank you. Next, a comeback thousands of years in the making. Wild bison have been released into woodlands in Kent this morning. The animals disappeared from the wilds of Britain thousands of years ago. They're still endangered, and these ones have been bred from European zoo herds. It's hoped their reintroduction will help reshape the UK's countryside. Finally, this lunchtime, a real-life Hollywood love story. Nearly 20 years after they first called off their first engagement, A-listers J-Lo and Ben Affleck have married. Jennifer Lopez said, "We did it. Love is beautiful. And it turns out love is patient." Yasmin Bottleby on the stars aligning.
You look gorgeous.
Bennifer just got official.
Somebody's getting married.
Jennifer Lopez was wearing a dress from an old movie.
And this was my wedding changing area.
Ben Affleck put on an old jacket, and just like that, 18 years after their first engagement, they tied the knot in Las Vegas. The next morning, Jennifer Lopez, who's changed her name to Jennifer Affleck, shared this picture on social media. You'd be forgiven for thinking this was an engagement party. It's actually a premiere earlier this year of one of J-Lo's very aptly titled films. There was a lot less fuss than this when they queued with 4 other couples this weekend for a marriage licence.
An even bigger surprise.
Hello. I'm sorry. Do we know each other?
Not yet. The couple met on the set of the movie Gigli in 2002. But as quickly as they got engaged, it was all off. They blamed the strain of the media frenzy. They now seem to be in the driving seat of what the world sees.
This is the best time of my life.
And with the 5 children they have between them, are finally starting married life. Yasmin Bottleby, ITV News.
J-Lo to J-A. That's it this lunchtime. Bye-bye.